Welcome back to the Colorado Springs Business Podcast. My name is Andrew Hasley, and I am the host of the show. Today, we are sponsored by the Colorado Springs Business Podcast. If you'd like me to read a 15 to 30 second ad script about your business at the beginning of every episode, we can make that happen. Reach out to cosbusinesspodcast@gmail.com. Second sponsor of the day is Vehement Visuals, which is my company, my video production company. We help businesses tell their story and build a deeper connection with their audience through powerful visual storytelling. And we create certain strategies as well for you to implement the videos that we create for you to really get the most effectiveness out of them, to squeeze them for everything that they can offer. And that's Vehement Visuals. And thirdly, this show has a Patreon page where it has membership, where there's bonus content on it. All the episodes are free, and it doesn't cost guests to come on the show. But we do have a Patreon page, and it really just it helps you show your support for the show, and it kind of creates this show and gives it like a Netflix or a Disney Plus, turning it into that in a way, I guess you could say. It just helps us. There's different levels that you can pay and to be a member, and each different level you get something else. So there's added content on that, and that's at patreon.com/COSbusiness. All right, so that's all the ads for today. I'm going to introduce our guests. Today we have on Kathi Mccarty. And can you tell us what you do in like a sentence or two?
Yes, thanks for having me here today, Andrew. I really am honored and appreciative.
Yeah.
I'm the founder and senior advocate of Meth Toxins Awareness Alliance. It's a unique organization, and I basically founded it as a preventative component to help with the dangerous impacts of meth toxins. I learned from a personal journey, to bring awareness, education, support through resources, and ultimately even prevention through legislative changes down the road on the dangerous impacts of meth toxins.
Nice. Well, I can't wait to get into that in this episode. So I'm going to roll the intro music and we'll jump right into that.
Sounds great.
This is a show where we have real conversations with entrepreneurs and business owners who are mostly in Colorado Springs, doing things in the community of Colorado Springs. Kathi, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Sweet. So you came down here from Denver, actually.
I did.
Okay.
Last night. Unique that we have a 60-degree shift change in weather. 98 degrees yesterday in Denver and 38 this morning here.
Wild.
Wow.
Yeah, because and like we scheduled this before we could even see that was possible.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm glad you came down, and really interested to hear what you're doing and kind of your story about how you got into this business.
Yeah, it's been a crazy journey. I'm almost 2 years into this journey that started October of 2018 when I learned the impacts of meth toxins in my own personal home in Evergreen, Colorado.
Okay. And how did that happen?
I'm gonna go back just about January of 2016. I had a health event, and I chose to rent out our family home, which is a modest restored cabin in the foothills of Denver in Evergreen. And health events can be life-changing and very costly. I have 3 grown children, and at that time they were all in various stages of college. Mm-hmm. Nobody was home but me, and I was blessed with tremendous support of family and friends to stay with, and decided to offset some of those significant health costs by renting, covering the mortgage. And through that, in 2017 and then in 2018, I hired a management company in early 2018 who ultimately rented to a tenant. And it was the tenant's actions that led to me learning that meth was actually not only consumed but manufactured in my home, along with some other significant drug activity.
So what are some of the adverse effects of meth toxins being residual in your house that, like, apparently you can't get out?
Right. It was 100 huge hurdles in the first 100 days when I learned of this. I had a water line break at the home that was outside the home that brought me there, and through that I discovered some hardware behind the home that led to a search warrant and ultimately learning about the manufacturing inside. And the effects are devastating to the home. In my case, this particular home is a restored cabin, and so it's all wood paneling in the inside, logs, things like that. And so the toxins actually permeate into the wood, into the cracks and whatnot. Drywall is, when you have a traditional home with drywall and things like that, it can be cleaned, or if it can't be, then you can take the drywall out to the studs and it's a different process. But with wood, I learned that it was a huge impact that would probably not be remediatable, is what I learned.
Yeah.
The other thing that I learned that was hugely impactful, which was one of my calls to action to bring this awareness, is that I did all the due diligence. Vetted a property management company. I was, it was shared to me what they would do to vet a tenant. I learned none of that happened, but more importantly, even I learned that all the insurances that I had, homeowners insurances, rental rider insurances, their tenant insurances, when criminal activity is performed in any particular home, it nulls and voids all of our insurances. And so this became my burden, my financial burden, as well as the fact that I also had to continue to pay my mortgage monthly, and I couldn't live in my home.
Yeah.
And then I had to figure out how bad it was, which was significant to Colorado standards, and any state standards, to be honest with you. And then I had to foot the bill for all of it. And then ultimately try to hold those responsible. And that was a huge undertaking.
Were you able to hold them responsible?
I learned through this process that not only the insurance industry, but the judicial process is as good as they tried. It's an illusion of protection. I had all the appropriate documentation to hold those responsible, and yet I still could not get whole in the process. This situation literally cost me personally hundreds of thousands of dollars. And again, once I was able to get over the hump of the devastation of the health impacts as well as the safety impacts of what was going on in my home, and which could ultimately impact my neighbors as well as my community, I learned that the financial impacts have been devastating. And I'm on a quest to turn my mess into a message to hope that it never happens to anyone else the way it's happened to me.
So when these people manufacture methamphetamines, the toxins from it, they're carcinogenic, or what's the harm of them?
Well, it puts off some toxins that stay within the surfaces of wherever it's manufactured. It can be simply manufactured even in a vehicle today, or a camper, or a U-Haul.
I heard that they do it in motorcycles.
Yeah, I mean, you could basically, what I've learned in this process, and I don't claim to be an expert. I've aligned myself with certified experts in the industry, but you can take a 2-liter bottle and the right components and shake it all up and make methamphetamines that can ultimately be consumed in many different ways. The toxins that are harmful are when they're smoked and they permeate into the walls and the surfaces and the flooring, as well as manufacturing.
Okay. So how does your business make money, essentially?
Well, right now I'm doing this during a pandemic where I am not looking to make an income from it, but to get the awareness and the education out with ways to ultimately Down the road, I'm experimenting with ways to monetize it, but the information is to get out there to as many individuals and trusted advisors who serve industries that are significant to real estate, property management, the legal industry, the insurance industries, all these industries that have a peripheral touch to this particular topic.
So impact is your ROI.
Right now, impact is my huge ROI, and I have a goal of this domino effect of reaching a minimum of 5 million people within the first year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it comes from, I started with 50 people about a year and a half ago, and if those 50 people share it with 10 people, and those people share it with 10 people, it's the power of 5 times down the road. I should hit 5 million people.
Okay.
We, as a collective effort of not only myself, but the
and
the
what's
experts,
the goal?
Ultimately, I have many goals, but ultimately, a few top goals is through prevention. Through this awareness is ultimate prevention, and if I can share what I've learned with somebody before they either decide to rent their home so they could put their protections in place, or they go to rent a home and they are aware that their space could be impacted, which could be very dangerous to themselves and their family and their friends who visit, as well as ultimately some legislative changes. So there's continuity and uniformity throughout, not only domestically, but the global impacts that we have with meth toxins. It's a huge silent crisis that most people aren't even aware of.
Yeah, I didn't know that it was so harmful even after the fact.
I had no idea either. And
just imagine how many hotels,
hotels, motels, the Airbnb industry. I've through this journey have met many people, several people along the road now who have their own meth toxin story. One specifically, a young woman on the Front Range here in the Denver area who Airbnb'd her a room in her home out and found that her home had been impacted by meth toxins as well, and that is devastating to learn. So
what about awareness on and prevention of? I guess you can't really prevent people from doing what they want to do, but helping people not do meth.
Well, that is its own separate topic, and I have personally been touched by people that are loved ones, family, and friends by the significant impacts of meth in their world, and how dangerous it was to them health-wise and professionally. I lost a family member who had a significant issue with that. I'll be honest with you, Andrew, it's out of my pay grade. But by bringing this awareness, it also helps, I believe, for the people that are impacted to maybe realize that they didn't even know that by smoking meth toxins in their own loved ones' homes will impact them as well. It's like secondary smoke or some other environmental impact. And especially, it's come to light to me that during this unique time with everybody being drawn indoors and in their homes, whether it's their home or somebody else's home that they're in, there's more smoking and manufacturing of meth going on than ever before. And so it's happening at a much greater level. And I believe that the more people are aware of it, whether it's a real estate transaction or a property management type transaction of changing of hands in that respect, it's like the virus. The more you test, the more you'll get either positive or negative results. But the more you test, the more you'll know what's going on.
For sure.
And that's what's really important. And especially with my background, I have a background in lending and banking for well over 30 years. And that's where the aha for me is it never was even brought to my attention in the significant career that I had as a peripheral in real estate that we should be testing for meth toxins as a standard. There are other standards that we test for, but nobody is testing for this. And there used to be a stigma where it would usually be a rundown home or a neighborhood where those types of activities may be more popular. And I've learned so much that it's unidentifiable. You can't see it, you can't smell it. You certainly couldn't tell in my home. And yet the impacts were so significant, it was shocking.
Yeah, so it's essentially getting, and also helping people put in place to protect themselves from that, essentially helping organize that legislation in a way.
Helping to spearhead and champion legislation that will, in some states, they don't even have any standards for meth toxins. And yet in other states, there's a huge inconsistency. So there's a mixed message. And then what I learned through the process with my own home in these last couple of years is that even though we have some of the best standards nationally for meth toxins, there's still some flaws in our system that really there's some holes in the processes, and that it would be disclosures should be standard, regardless of whether it was remediated to the standard of that state. I believe that everybody coming to purchase a new home should know that that home at one time had been impacted by meth toxins, so they would understand to do their due diligence and really become educated as to what then they are engaging in should they decide to then purchase that home and ultimately take on the future responsibilities that could come with it, even though it met a state statute where that home was located.
For sure. It's also, I guess, would be kind of scary to test, because then if you do have meth toxins in your home, that's not good.
It's not good.
Yeah. Then you just have now you have like a huge problem on your hands.
If you're the current homeowner and you choose to test, absolutely. For me, what I learned is that not only did I have this health event that led me to rent out my family home initially, but then I would be asking family and friends to come into my home, and the significant impact not only to my health, because I had this event in 2016 that led me to realize that I really had to take this seriously, but it's highly impactful to children. Meth toxins especially, and this is from studies that I've read. I am not a certified expert in any way, but I have read that levels within children have equated to similar to adults actually using recreationally meth toxins. They're low to the ground. It gets caught in the flooring, the carpeting. There have been reports of infants dying. They touch the walls, they touch the surfaces, and so, as well as elderly and at-risk adults like myself. So this is a very, very dangerous, invisible substance.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have to research it a bit, because it's wild that it could be so toxic, you know? But it makes sense, because that stuff is hella toxic.
If you look at the ingredients of what goes into the manufacturing, it's mind-boggling what people will put into their body. But it affects respiratory systems, central nervous systems, brain development in infants, and so many other varying layers that the medical industry does address. Once you just Google it, and of course that's huge. But then ultimately, when I learned that what was going on in my home, because there was so much criminal activity going on, it was so dangerous. And at that time, we were in a phase 1 fire ban in the foothills there. Fires are huge right now, as you know, here in Colorado. We're having a one-day reprieve, but there have been fires burning all over for weeks and weeks, hundreds and hundreds, millions of acres.
Yesterday,
I believe.
you couldn't even see the mountains.
You couldn't, and I've been brushing ash off of my vehicles and things, which is nothing compared to what people are dealing with.
Yes,
Living in Evergreen, I personally have been evacuated in the 25 years I lived there 3 times from fires, and we had a fire earlier this season, probably 6 weeks ago or a month ago, that could have been catastrophic. But what I learned is that the danger that was going on in my home, not only due to THC extraction system manufacturing outside,
they use a lot of butane and chemicals and stuff to extract the THC.
There were butane igniter paraphernalia behind my home outside, and I live in the forest. There are trees all over.
Oh no, yeah.
There was a butane oven inside my home that I was told by the drug task force was a highly explosive piece of equipment, and these things were there without my knowledge. And this all happened, by the way, in a 90-day time frame with this individual. So very short period of time frame, and I have nothing but gratitude in my heart that the home did not explode and then endanger my neighbors and then ultimately my community because of the fact that we were in such a fire ban. So this is part of the awareness, is that it may not be in your home, but we all have maybe areas in our neighborhoods, in our communities, where something looks a little sketchy, but we don't do anything about it. We don't raise our hand and look into it more, or ask our authorities to look into it. And it could be a very dangerous situation to our own family and ultimately our community.
For sure. So you want to take? You mentioned you're wanting to turn this into a nonprofit, kind of.
I am in the inception stages of working with a group of I refer to my internal support system as a group of heroes. Excuse me, that are helping me transition this into ultimately a nonprofit. I would like to provide prevention and support through resources and other prevention tools that will, through grants and contributions, allow us to be eligible so we can just have a bigger outreach. This is something that I've, with them, helped start these grassroots here in the Front Range of Denver, but starting to reach out into other cities and communities and even in other states. Not just in Colorado, but ultimately in other states. So
what will the nonprofit be doing? Like, it'll be working with property management companies, or?
Yeah, right now, so what I started to do prior to the pandemic is to align with certified experts that teach, that educate about meth toxins through continuing education courses. They're certified in the state of Colorado, and then, of course, when the pandemic hit, there wasn't any more in-person things going on, and there's a couple that I've been able to align with that I learned have these courses approved through DORA, the Department of Regulatory Agency here in the state of Colorado. So I reach out to associations, organizations, and groups and individuals who want to get online and learn about meth toxins, whether they want a continuing education benefit, course benefit, because they need that through their maybe through their profession, or they just want to get it out to their to themselves for their own individual growth. Doing both, and so we've had some online courses. We can take up to 100 people at one time. Okay. The first one that we did almost 2 weeks ago, we had 80 registrations, which is huge awareness. Not all 80 were able to log in that day for whatever reason, but the interest is huge. We have more lined up here in the next few weeks to come, and the goal is just to get this out there to as many individuals and organizations that want to learn about meth toxins, trusted advisors in many industries, whether they're CPAs, attorneys, insurance, real estate, property management, you name it.
And how does a nonprofit make money? Because you got to be able to fund all this, all these resources, and be able to. I mean, I guess it could be purely not or volunteers.
Right. Ultimately, through this pandemic, I'm hoping at least through this year that we can offer these continuing education type courses at no cost, or even whether they're with credits or not with credits. But ultimately, to help me underwrite the cost, if we need to charge to be able to go online and have this class, will depend upon what the cost will be as we get into 2021 and have a small fee to log in. But if we can fill these classes from 50 to 100 people at a time, I'm sure we can find a cost that's not prohibitive, where anybody and everybody could benefit from it.
So how does nonprofits make money, I guess?
How do nonprofits make money?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of my journey. My goal is not to make money for the sense of profit, but to make enough money to be able to support people that are impacted with meth toxins and to continue to bring that awareness and education. I've met several families along the way in these last several months who have been impacted. So through contributions, as well as even sponsorships by experts who serve in this industry of meth toxins, whether they're remediation companies, insurance, legal teams, whatever, is possibly to have them help support it, because ultimately the more awareness and education we bring, they will ultimately benefit by the business that they help support the industry that continues to grow based off this awareness. And so taking those contributions and then turning them back into support for people impacted, because one of the things that I learned ultimately is I was still paying on my mortgage for over 18 months, even though my home was condemned by the county and I couldn't live there. And alternative housing needs to be provided. And if you don't have family and friends that can help put you up, you have to write a rent check to somewhere else to stay. And most people can't afford both.
Yeah. Definitely.
Along with the testing and the cleanup costs that come with it, or the construction costs if it can't be cleaned.
So have you started your own businesses before, or is this first time?
This is the first time.
Oh, sweet. So what did you do before?
I had what I refer to as successful. I solely enjoyed what I do, what I was doing. But the last 10 years prior to me retiring because of that health event that I had in 2016, I was managing a large retail bank locally in the Denver community, and managing a retail branch for a bank encompasses many things, with a lot of lending, banking, global tools, things like that. And prior to that, for over 20 years, I was in the residential lending industry as a direct originator or managing groups of originators.
Okay.
So it was a tremendously diversified and fun career for me. It was very flexible to raise a family in those types of career. I did it before I moved to Colorado on the West Coast, in Southern California, as well as here.
Okay, is that where you're from?
I'm originally from Ohio.
Okay.
But I had my family moved to San Diego when I was still in high school, so I spent some time there before coming here.
Nice. I gotta hit this button real quick. So is there anything else you'd like to cover specifically?
Well, there's so many caveats to meth toxins that I learned. And when these types of things impact your home, it's not just a financial impact. It's not just about cleaning it up. There's an emotional impact to the violation of your safety and your security. When somebody comes into your home, whether it's somebody that you knew, or in my case, I had temporarily rented my home out. And so the journey is an emotional spectrum, and one that I've been navigating, like I mentioned, for almost 2 years. And it's something that I couldn't do alone. I have been thoroughly blessed with family and close friends that have walked this journey with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I highly encourage people that are have had this situation happen to them to reach out to the resources that are available to them. I've been able to walk this path where I see myself as the Aaron Brockovich of Meth Toxins. Yeah. It's something that just came into my sights, and now I've championed this to bring this awareness and education. So the devastation and the mess that I've
Mm-hmm.
learned, again, is a message that will help others so they can get in front of it and learn about it and Google it. Learn about the homes that if you're looking to purchase a home, talk to your neighbors or your future neighbors before you buy. Walk the neighborhood. Look for areas of impact. Google the history on the home and the things that I've learned about records within a home, because you could have a home that was tremendously in distress. Somebody comes in and they fix it up cosmetically, but
Mm-hmm.
there are things behind the scenes that I've learned that the toxins can resurface, and once they're painted over, they get encapsulated and they can resurface, and it's something that needs to be addressed so that you really know that if it does resurface, whether it's days, weeks, months, or even years later, it doesn't dissipate, and then you could ultimately be impacted by the health and safety issues,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the financial impacts of cleaning it up again down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So that is certainly one thing I would encourage everybody to look into is the history of a property.
How would you have prevented this from happening to you?
Well, that's a great question. I personally put my trust into a professional agency that didn't do their due diligence, and I try to put all those protections in
Mm-hmm.
place, and you ultimately the professionals that we hire should be accountable for their actions. So I hope this type of conversation that we're having also helps to spark a heightened level of awareness
Mm-hmm.
for the management industry, the property management industry, that to take a next level of understanding of who they're renting to. My story has all the storylines of a movie of sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Okay.
This particular individual that rented my home was supposedly a business owner in the entertainment industry, and
Mm-hmm.
it turned out not to be that way. And just the basic levels of vetting a tenant would have uncovered all that. So,
Yeah, I was about to say, how would they have prevented that? How would they have done that?
well, in that particular case, and just following the basic standards of protocol within the property management industry is all they needed to do.
And what are those protocols?
Let's just start with pulling a credit report
Okay.
and making a phone call or two on a reference,
Mm-hmm.
visiting the property when you have a tenant
Mhm.
move in, and then visiting the property. This happened within the first 90 days,
Mm-hmm.
and this is all public record. So, but none of that was done,
Oh, dang.
even though it was shared that it was done.
Mhm.
So I don't know how to avoid it because I engaged in all the vetting
Mhm.
questions beyond what a standard person possibly would even have prepared for,
Mhm.
because I had experience myself as a landlord and managing a property, as well as with my lending career, asking additional deeper questions.
Yeah. So yeah, they didn't do what they were supposed to do, essentially. And they should have how they reported that they did, though? is what you said?
It was shared that they had done those types of the inquiries that I made as to anybody who had moved in. I had a standard of questions that I would ask, and I would ask to even review the documentation.
And you didn't even do that because you hired someone to do that, and you thought that they would, essentially.
It was confirmed with me that they had.
Dang.
And that's, Andrew, part of why this hits so deep with me is it hit to my core values of how I performed as a professional, all my career, of my core values of honesty and integrity. And all of that was shattered. And, that hit me very deep on many levels. So it was hard to ignore, not only from that perspective, but then the perspective of what I learned through the insurance industry, putting all those protections in place, not knowing that criminal activity is void of all of our homeowners insurances and renters policy when
Even if it wasn't your criminal activity? Like, what if someone breaks into your house? That's criminal activity.
Well, that's different. If somebody breaks into your house, then I did learn that if the home was vacant and somebody broke in and they damaged it, it can fall under the vandalism category.
Okay.
So you're absolutely correct in there, and I'd like to correct that and restate it. But the insurance experts that I've reached out to, that I know professionally and personally, it's not just like one major carrier. I haven't found them through any of the major carriers yet that would be willing to underwrite a separate rider or a standard within our policies that this criminal type of activity would be covered. To give you an example, if I had a family member in the home and they smoked meth in their room and I learned that it was smoked, that's not covered either. It's not just when a crime is committed, but meth is not legal at any level.
No. Adderall.
Adderall. Okay. So yeah, but as far as smoking it and recreational use, it is not legal. And so, if this was a home that I was actually living in and a family or a friend had compromised an area of the home, I would still be held responsible. It wouldn't be covered under my homeowners association or my homeowners policy.
So you want to help put those policies in place for insurance companies that people have the option to get covered by that?
Well, it's certainly something that I'm looking into with personal friends that are in the insurance industry right now to see what coverages are, if anybody's even offering it, or whether they would even consider offering it as an option rider at a significant premium, I'm assuming. This is not isolated to homes. It's in our vehicles as well as commercial real estate. People who are recreationally doing it in their homes may be doing it on the job.
And it could be anyone. It's not just the homeless person or the scraggly person you see.
It is not.
It's at every level of our society.
It is, and it's all of our loved ones, and there's a significant problem. And I would love to be able to find ways to then, as you said, monetize this in some way, and then help those that need the help. But in this case, it's helping those that are impacted outside of the direct user or manufacturer, but the rest of us who are, who the domino affects, the secondary smoke, literally. I grew up and both my parents were, smokers, and I had impacts, my respiratory system impacted from being in vehicles and in homes where smoking was practiced, and so that's what's going on here. But you don't even see it, and you don't smell it, and it doesn't dissipate over time. It stays in the surfaces, permeates, and is damaged forever. I rented out my home furnished, and so when When I sold it in April of this year, I mean, I rented the biggest dumpster I could get, and every piece of personal property went into that dumpster that was in the home. It wasn't savable. The memories are, it's just stuff, and stuff can be regained, but it's what it represents.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
It's quite a journey. And I just want not a single person to be impacted in this same way.
Mm-hmm.
The financial impact ultimately is devastating. For myself, I sold my home, leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity on the table because I could not get whole by the insurance, by the judicial process, and the insurance industries either holding those responsible and or ultimately selling it and retaining my equity. That's just the reality of it all.
Mm-hmm. So the people who were doing it, they got busted.
Yes, the individual who was manufacturing it, along with manufacturing hash oil, I believe, extracting THC from pot, he was arrested.
Mm-hmm. So there's no holding him accountable because he's probably in prison.
Well, he was arrested. He went through the judicial process, and he actually never stuck around for his criminal trial.
Oh, so he's on the lam.
He's on the lam.
Okay.
Which is part of the impact of ultimately getting judicial closure at an optimal level when there's a lot of moving parts. The judicial process, I've learned, is very complicated, and the insurance industry is an illusion to protect us. When you have policies and you have protections in place, the attorneys that insurance companies hire actually went after me.
Oh wow!
It's an exhausting process, and again, I that's why I don't want anybody else to go through this.
For sure.
Situation. I don't see myself as a victim. I see this as a journey, as a path that happened for a purpose. It's a purpose that I recognized is a huge, significant problem that affects us all, and that was my call to action, is to put this situation into some benefits that are already showing that they're saving lives. People that have heard about my story just in my community have now tested for homes that they would normally maybe not test for on Meth Toxins before they purchased it. And we've had other homes test positive for Meth Toxins to where then they didn't end up purchasing that home and maybe moved on to another home, or if the levels were within a standard that were acceptable for them, they may have waited to have that home remediated to a standard that was acceptable to them and the state, because it has to get a clearance. But this is all something that I've learned over this past summer, that it's had a very positive impact.
That's good. I'm glad you took this and are doing something about it instead of letting it destroy you completely, because I'm sure it's destroyed you in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's good. That's good that you're doing something about it, and I'm happy to have you on the show and be talking about it and helping you spread the awareness and getting your message out there.
I'm beyond delighted to be here. I hope that people who are interested in learning more will go to our website, methtoxinsalliance.com. I have a Facebook page as well. Like the Facebook page, get the word out. If you'd like to take an opportunity for your group, organization, with or without continuing education credits here in Colorado, or even in another, if you hear about this in another city of Colorado or even another state, I welcome the chance to bring this information from the experts. I promise you won't be disappointed by what you learn, and then utilize the website as a tool and a resource, because there's so much more content to add from the people who serve the industry about meth toxins, cleanup and whatnot. And the goal is to continue to grow it, add value, and just get the word out. And then ultimately with that, to see some changes. Behavior changes is for how we view meth toxins, and that there is no neighborhood, no home or no neighborhood that is really immune, like you said, to the impacts, and to make a difference and to save lives ultimately.
Nice. Well, Kathi, it was great having you on the show. I guess we can start wrapping up the show. This has been the Colorado Springs Business Podcast, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you.